we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elsa Chitet, and I'm the current Director of Activities for the Medical Science Academy. We welcome everyone who's joining us live or watching this video after its launch. It's truly an honor for FBIC Medical Science Academy to have the chance for LifeGift to be our special speakers for today. During this COVID-19 pandemic, many of our students have had to adjust to online learning to learn about their current class materials and current events. So our speakers and us just wanted to take this time to get together and talk about critical issues such as organ transplantation in honor of National Donate Life Month, and talk about how this organization has adjusted to this pandemic to help serve our community. It's truly an interesting and important topic to discuss, with many of our listeners being future healthcare professionals and having the passion to help our community through the skills they have. LifeGift, for those unfamiliar, is a not-for-profit organ procurement organization that recovers organs and tissues for individuals needing transplants in the North, Southeast, and West Texas region, partnering with more than 200 hospitals across 109 counties. Personally, the trials and tribulations of life-saving organ transplant and tissue transplant has been something I've been able to witness in the past 4 years of high school, spending my summers volunteering in transplant dialysis clinics and interacting with transplant patients of different backgrounds. To have LifeGift serve as a center point of hope for these individuals truly means a lot for me and for other people. So in this live stream today, LifeGift will be providing more of an introduction of what their organization represents and its current impacts on the community, as well as to share their personal stories of organ transplantation and their organization's current adjustments and accomplishments during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we mentioned before. Today we have amazing speakers from us today from LifeGift. If you guys could give us a small wave at the camera. We also have some staff members and student leaders from FBISD joining us as well, if you guys could give a wave too. I will allow our special guest speakers to introduce themselves as we go through this live stream and talk about certain topics. Our YouTube live stream chat is on, so if any of our audience members have any question throughout this live stream, be sure to input it into the chat box below, and I'll address it during our Q&A session at the end of their presentation. I'll be looking at the chat box throughout this live stream, so don't be shy. Ms. Ruskili, whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away. I'm going to switch the screen to the main presentation.
Thank you, Elsa. Thank you for such a lovely introduction, and thank you for having LifeGift participate in this webinar. My name is Christina Reese-Healy. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for LifeGift. Next slide. Our organization is a federally funded nonprofit organization. Across the U.S., there are 58 OPOs in the country. LifeGift facilitates the gift of life through organ and tissue donation. In Texas, there are 3 OPOs, and we are the blue area on the Texas map on the right-hand side. As Elsa mentioned, LifeGift serves more than 200 hospitals in 109 Texas counties. Next slide. We're so fortunate to be working here in Houston. We work alongside 6 other transplant centers in Houston and 3 others in Fort Worth. Our OPO collaborates with these transplant centers to make transplantation possible. And as you can see, several of these transplant centers specialize in different kind of transplant, whether it's heart, kidney, pancreas, and liver. Next slide. So the organs that could be transplanted, on the left side of the screen, you see the circles in blue. That is the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, the intestine, and the pancreas. So one person who's registered to be an organ donor can impact up to 8 lives. Here on the left, we see 6 organs. So the lungs can be allocated to one person through a double lung transplant or through one lung transplant, and so can the kidneys. And in some cases, the liver can be split into 2, providing the lower portion of the liver for an infant and the upper portion for an adult. For tissue, what we transplant the most of are cornea. Cornea are able to restore sight, provide sight for those who are becoming blind. Tendons are very helpful for people who have injured their own tendons. You hear about several athletes getting tendon transplants. Veins are incredibly life-saving by restoring blood flow to the body. Skin is very important for burn victims that need to recover. Without this skin, they will not be able to survive. And then bone. Bone is important to provide mobility to people who have lost the ability to use their own bones. So it's important to remember a single organ donor can save the lives of 8 people, and a tissue donor can heal 72 people, up to 72 people. Next slide. So why do we exist? Why do we have OPOs? Well, the reality is that across the U.S., the need is great. The need is great for organ transplantation across the country. And while more than 100 transplants take part every day across the country, there are still over 113,000 people waiting for a life-saving organ. 10,000 of those live in Texas alone. Texas has the second longest waiting list after California in the country. So 22 people die every day waiting for a life-saving organ, and every 10 minutes somebody is added on to the list. So that is the problem. Our lists are getting longer, and the wait is also becoming longer. So there aren't enough organs to go around. The good news is that one organ donor can save 8 lives. Next slide. So here in Texas, we have a lot of people who are waiting for transplants. As I mentioned before, 10,000 people in Texas are waiting for a life-saving organ. And one of the biggest challenges that we have in the community when it comes to community outreach and education are educating our various ethnic communities about organ donation, because as you can imagine, many people have preconceived notions, misconceptions, taboos, and misunderstandings that can be cultural or religious about organ transplantation. It is also important for us to educate people about the importance of organ donation, because while people of color can receive organs from white donors, it is also very helpful to have organs by match based on their own community. So here in Texas, more than 70% of those who are waiting for life-saving organs are minority. So while our registration rates are rising, if you take a look at 2011, we were at 2.7 million people registered in Texas. And thanks to the DPS, now we're at over 11 million registrants. Next slide. But while we have so many people registered here in Texas, we still need more people to participate in the registration process. If you take a look at your school district, Fort Bend, 47% of those who are eligible to register are registered, and we can see that there are some other counties that have much lower registration rates. So registration is really the key to increased transplantation. So educating our communities about organ donation and the importance of donor registration really makes a difference. And, there's some food for thought here when you realize that 95% of people believe in the idea of saving lives through transplantation. Only 50% are registered. And why? So next slide. A lot of this is due to taboos and fears and misconceptions in the community. Here in Houston, we have the extra responsibility to educate our very diverse community about organ donation. We rank 14th in the country for foreign-born populations and 15th in the percentage of people speaking another language at home. If you take a look at Fort Bend, these are numbers from 2013. There are over 162,000 people that have come from anywhere else around the world. So with coming to Houston or the United States from another country, this also comes with imported beliefs of maybe the medical practices in the country, misinformation about organ donation, or just lack of any education of information. So these are some of these issues that we take very seriously when it comes to organ donation education and educating people. We make an extra effort to reach out to our various multicultural communities. Next slide, please. So throughout the transplantation process, we overcome taboos and misconceptions at every step. We have a wonderful group of people working at LifeGift that are family care specialists. They're the ones that support and offer hope to grieving families during and after the donation process. These are the people that come into the hospital during a family's, when a family just lost someone, and this is one of the worst times in their life, and they are able to talk to these grieving families about organ donation, explain the process, request permission for them to proceed with, request authorization for them to proceed with transplantation, or let them know that their loved one was a registered donor. And in some cases, those conversations never happen, so they do have uh, a very challenging role. We have our clinical coordinators that also they work side by side with our clinicians in the hospital to assess the patients and see if they're eligible to be organ donors. And all of this also includes working with people who may not always be as fluent in transplantation issues as our staff. Also, we have our hospital staff, our hospital development staff. Their role is to go into the hospitals and continue to develop an optimal donation environment. This means educating the staff and the doctors and working with the system within the hospital to make sure people are aware of organ donation. And many times this also means working with clinicians, doctors, and nurses that have also come from abroad and come from different communities and have different cultural beliefs. This means also educating them about organ donation. And of course, there are the roles that we have, our volunteers and our department, which is educating the public about the importance of organ donation. And once again, there's a lot of education that goes into teaching them if their religion supports it, and more often than not, yes, all religions support or either support or recommend organ donation. Next slide. So I want to take a moment to highlight that our organization doesn't just only focus on organ recovery and transplantation. We also have an incredible department that is our donor family specialists, and they provide support for the donor families that extends beyond the immediate time surrounding donation. Their goal is to continue supporting the donor families by connecting them to grief resources in the community, also offering them information on how their loved one has helped others with organs and what tissue were transplanted, and which people and how many other people, and also providing them with the opportunity to meet the recipient of their loved one's organs. In the photo below, you can see a mother whose husband actually passed away, and her husband's heart went into this gentleman that's giving her a hug. So once a year, we have these family gatherings in which we honor donors and provide them with a medal of honor, and our volunteers or other staff give them a rose in gratitude for their wonderful gift. Next slide. So to be able to achieve this great goal of educating our community about organ donation, to be able to overcome the fears, the taboos, and misconceptions, provide people with information about how to register, where to register, why to register. We have year-long events throughout the year. So I'm going to focus on the ones highlighted in yellow. We have our Donate Life Parade float, which is once a year. You'll hear more about that from one of our speakers who's on the call today, Kristen Cowan. National Donate Life Month, which is what we're celebrating now, has been quite a challenge for us this year because of COVID. I'll be talking a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. And then Pride. Pride has also become a priority for Donate Life America because it's really important to educate the LGBT community about how they too can participate in transplantation. They too can register to be organ donors. There have been some misconceptions and misinformation within this community. It's also important to educate about the importance of HIV patients being able to transplant, HIV patients being able to transplant their organs into HIV patients who are waiting for life-saving organ. And the same goes for hepatitis A, B, and C. All of those organs can be transplantable into recipients with the same condition. Next slide. September, this is our Donate Life Second Chance Run, which will take place in Mead Park. That's September 27th. This is an incredible opportunity for you to come out and support the transplant community, support LifeGift. get to know other people in the transplant community, you can register by going to our LifeGift.org website. You can develop a team. Your high school can actually develop a team, or you can volunteer. Next slide. To be able to go out in the community and overcome these taboos, fears, and misconceptions, we have other multicultural events like Dia de los Muertos. This is a great opportunity to interact with the Latino and the Hispanic community to honor their loved ones. The Mexican tradition of Day of the Dead is a celebration and a remembrance of those who have died. National Donor Sabbath is very important for us to engage with our religious leaders and our religious institutions to inspire fellowships and religious groups to learn more about organ donation and register, and more importantly, understand what their faith believes about organ donation. Slide. Of course, we have our wonderful group of the Ambassadors of Hope. Our work will never get done if it wasn't for them. They are a huge part of our community education in the community. Ambassadors of Hope are our volunteers. They offer hope to those who are waiting for organ, eye, and tissue transplants in the community, because they go out and they share their stories, and they share their journey with transplantation, sharing the story from the time they were sick to the time waiting and recovering. You'll hear more about that from Kristen and Melvin, who are on the call today. So this is a wonderful opportunity if you're looking for volunteer opportunities, maybe something to help you with your college application. You're welcome to also become a volunteer at LifeGift.org. If you click on Get Involved, there's an application that you can fill out and it will be sent to us. Next slide. So here's some examples of a few volunteer events. In fact, the one on the upper left-hand corner, that is actually at Fort Bend ISD last year. I believe that is your school president on the left. I'm not exactly sure. Right, Chelsea? And on the right, we have a picture from our Second Chance Run. That is a group of high school volunteers with some of our staff. On the bottom left, that's some of our staff at Pride. And then we have a photo of Christine Cowan and her family. And then on the bottom right, we have a picture of Joey Case. Joey Case is a NASCAR driver whose mother died waiting, and he donates his car shells to Donate Life Texas events. And in this case, it was a pediatric event inviting the pediatric recipients to put their handprint on the car and then write a thank you note to their donor. So these are some examples of some volunteer events that we take part in to educate the community. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, overcoming some of these cultural and religious misconceptions and taboos requires us to really focus on multicultural education. So this past year, we focused on attending several different kinds of multicultural festivals, events, chamber discussions. And here are a couple of pictures of us at the Korean Festival, at the Caribbean Chamber Association, other Creole and African events. And of course, here's a picture at the Chinese Community Education Center. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, April is National Donate Life Month, and with COVID, we've had to make some adjustments to continue our community education and our virtual events. So fortunately, our staff was able to work with different people in the community to get some city landmarks, bridges, and hospitals lit up in blue and green, which are our colors of National Donate Life Month. And this has helped us to create awareness and inspire conversations within the community. Also, our Second Chance Run in Fort Worth and Lubbock have become virtual. So we haven't canceled those events, we've just made them virtual events. Next slide. And here's a picture of the Pier 1 Tower in Fort Worth, which was also lit up in blue and green. Next slide. And to continue our virtual education, we've been working with colleges, universities, high schools, and collaborating with our community partners in donation to be able to maintain our education, our volunteer recruitment organization, Also, we are providing our volunteers with support through fellowship circles. These are, 1 hour sessions where people in the transplant community can meet on a Zoom call and just share what they're experiencing, make new friends, and see old friends. Slide. And so lastly, I want you to take some time and think about how you too can make a difference. Where are the opportunities within your community? Who are the people that you can talk to inspire conversations? I recommend that, tonight you talk to your family about organ donation. Think about starting a high school Donate Life Club. We have the Donate Life Texas Recycle Me program. And there are also opportunities for us to create a virtual registry drive so you can inspire more people in your high school to become organ donors. But also, if you do register to become an organ donor, which you can do at donatelifetexas.org, through the iPhone Health app, or at the DPS, please do talk to your family about your decision and let them know that you're thinking about becoming registering to become an organ donor. If you guys have any questions, if you want to talk about a high school Donate Life Club, volunteer for the Second Chance Run, become an ambassador of hope, please send me an email at kfreesehealy@lifegift.org. So thank you. So up next, we have Lauren Quinn. Next slide, please. Lauren Quinn is our LifeGift Vice President of External Affairs, and she is here to give you the latest information on COVID-19 and transplantation.
Great, thanks, Christina. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Quinn. Elsa, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? All right. So in addition to being a vice president at LifeGift, I also live in Fort Bend County, and I have 2 kids who go to school at Lexington Creek Elementary. So I am very happy to join you all today. Thanks for having us. So like Christina mentioned, she asked me to talk a little bit about how our world of donation and transplant has changed over the last couple of months due to COVID. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about the disease and how it's impacted our world, but also how we are continuing to support families and save lives through donation, even through the challenges of dealing with this pandemic. Next slide. Okay, so this is probably all stuff that you have heard by listening to the news or reading the news lately, but COVID-19 is a disease that has been caused by the virus SARS-CoV-2. So if you want to get really clinical when you are talking about testing people for coronavirus, what we're actually doing is testing people for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19. And it's in the family of SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. It's a respiratory disease, and as I think everybody knows, it's been classified as a global pandemic and has really influenced, of course, all facets of healthcare as well as our way of life over the last 2 months or so. And I created this slide a few days ago, and of course the numbers have changed. We've got over 1 million confirmed cases right now, and I believe there's been over 60,000 confirmed deaths in the United States. So a very highly contagious disease that's really posed, some unique challenges to the work that we do. Fortunately, our staff and our mission, our organ procurement clinical staff, are all considered to be essential healthcare workers. So we are committed to continuing saving lives through donation and transplant, even while dealing with the challenges of working in the hospital environment and in the midst of a global health crisis. So certainly, when we are thinking about all of the essential healthcare workers out there, doing heroic work, caring for patients that have COVID-19 and working at the hospitals, please also keep a thought for, staff that are working in fields like donation and transplant and healthcare that may not be dealing directly with COVID patients, but are still, going to the hospitals every day and are committed to carrying out their mission. Next slide. Okay, so specific donation challenges due to COVID-19. It's actually a rule out for organ donation because it is such a new disease and we are still learning new things about this disease every day. If a patient has COVID-19, we unfortunately are unable to consider them a potential organ donor. Another challenge that we have found, which is actually a positive challenge, is that, we are actually seeing potential for organ donation dropping because of great reasons. People are doing what they are supposed to be doing, staying home, not going out in their cars. We are seeing much less traffic on the roads. We are seeing people obeying the stay-at-home orders, which is all really good things. That, we're seeing less car accidents, we're seeing less trauma, which means there's less opportunity for organ donation. But that is certainly, a silver lining. We're glad that people are staying safe. We have seen hospitals limiting, people that can go into their institutions for very good reasons. They want to make sure that, everybody that is in the hospital really needs to be there to limit exposure to germs. And while our clinical staff are considered essential staff, and they are still going into the hospitals, we have limited other staff from going in. Most importantly, our hospital educators, which are folks that work for us that go in and build the donor programs at hospitals in collaboration with the hospital staff. We've been keeping them working in new creative ways, working remotely because we don't want them in the hospitals. We have also seen a challenge with some families not able to come to the hospital to say goodbye to their loved ones. For example, we have a family that we had a potential donor in Texas, and the family was from Louisiana. And if they were to come from Louisiana to Texas, they would have had to quarantine when they crossed the border over. So they were unable to come and say goodbye to their loved ones. And, we've also just seen some hospitals not allowing any visitors at all, including families, which means that rather than having a face-to-face conversation with families about their option for donation after their loved one has passed away, we've had to have those conversations remotely. We've had to do video calls like we're doing right now, or just talk to them over the phone, which is always a little bit more challenging than being able to be in the room with somebody and talk through that process with them. But our family care staff, who are specialized staff with specific training to work with families during end of life situations, has really risen to the challenge and been able to still provide care for families even if it's being done in a virtual setting. It can also be challenging to allocate organs for transplant. So one of our responsibilities is, when we have an authorized organ donor, we're clinically managing that donor, and we're also responsible for allocating the organs, which is, maintained by, the waiting list is maintained by an organization called the United Network for Organ Sharing, but we actually go down the list and place the organs. It really depends where you are across the country as to how hard hit the transplant programs have been. We've had some transplant centers who say they will not accept an organ from a hard hit area like New York City, even if the organ appears healthy and the donor has been tested for COVID. We've had some transplant centers, and I'm talking on a national basis, not necessarily here in Texas, but that are being far more conservative about accepting cardiovascular organs, heart and lungs, because those are the organs that are going to be most affected by COVID. So, we are very fortunate that we have not suffered as severe an impact here in Houston and in Texas in terms of the disease as a place like New York City or Seattle has been, or Detroit, where some of those transplant centers have even, stopped transplanting patients. And, another challenge that we face nationally is PPE shortages, and everybody has heard about this on the news, that hospitals are running short on PPE, and certainly when we have folks in the hospitals working in the critical care units, and when we are going to an operating room with a donor, we are using proper PPE. So again, not as much of a problem here in Texas, but certainly our friends and colleagues in New York City and Washington and California have had to deal with this. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about the organ donation challenges. What about the other side of it, the transplant challenges? So to start off with, transplant recipients, so after someone receives an organ transplant, they have to take immunosuppressants, which sort of fool the body into thinking that the organ is part of their body, that it's not a foreign entity, so that the patient's own body won't attack the organ. But what that does is makes them more susceptible to disease. They may also have underlying medical conditions that may make COVID, more dangerous for them. So certainly transplant programs, if they're following patients after transplant care, have to be very careful about bringing those patients into the hospital setting because they are very susceptible to germs, infections, and disease. Transplant surgeries, like we're talking about with PPE, they require hospital staff, they require OR staff, they require hospital resources. So again, in parts of the country which have seen, huge increases in COVID, are limiting transplants that they're doing unless they're emergent. Someone's life needs to be saved urgently. A lot of living kidney transplants have been stopped in those parts of the country, and actually even here in Houston, because those patients can sustain on dialysis and will not lose their life while they're waiting for a kidney transplant. So we have seen transplants slow down quite a bit across the country because we want to keep those patients out of the hospital if possible to keep them safe. Of course, we've also seen in places like New York City, surgeons that typically are, provide other specialty services being looped into providing COVID care. So kind of loops back to, hospital resources. If physicians are busy caring for COVID patients because their resources are overwhelmed, they're not going to be doing things like elective surgeries, specialty surgeries, transplants. And again, that really depends where you are in the country. Next slide. So how have we, as the Organ Procurement Organization, or one of three here in Texas, responded to these challenges? First and foremost, we have continued our operations. We have a stewardship to the families of potential donors, the families of patients that actually become donors, to support them, to honor their loved one's decision to be a donor. And we also have, a very special responsibility to those waiting for a life-saving transplant to continue on with our work. And that's exactly what we've done. When a hospital refers a patient to us, we do go on site to that hospital to evaluate that patient. And of course, if the family is on site and it's appropriate time to talk to them about the option of donation, we will do that. As I mentioned before, we've had to be a little bit creative if a family's not able to be there. But we have continued to, maintain our clinical operations to do the work that we do. We have, moved our non-clinical staff to working remote. I'm actually in our office today, and as you can tell, I've got my office door open while I'm doing this presentation because I'm not bothering anybody to slow the spread of infection and to make sure we are taking social distancing very seriously here. We are having as many staff as we can work remotely that do not have to be out in the field. Which has allowed us to be creative in different ways too. One of the departments that I oversee is our hospital educators, our professional development folks that generally are in the hospitals every day, doing rounds, talking with our key contacts, following up if we've had process issues, and providing education to the staff at the hospital. They haven't been able to be at the hospital, but that's allowed us to use digital platforms to provide new ways of educating them, doing virtual rounds with our nurse managers there, which the hospital staff has appreciated as they've been so busy over the last 2 months, and certainly our staff has appreciated as well. We do test every potential donor for COVID-19. So like I said, that's a rule out for organ donation right now. So we want to make sure when we do have a potential donor that we're proceeding safely. I talked a little bit about how we're discussing donation options with families over tools like FaceTime. And of course, because we have a pool of potential donors have grown smaller for very good reasons, people are being safe and staying inside, we also just need to make sure that we are working as hard as we can to maximize the gift of life and honor people's decisions to donate whenever we have the opportunity to do so. Next slide. So, I think just to sum up the lessons that we've learned throughout this pandemic, and to be honest, we're still learning lessons every day. We have an all leadership call every morning to talk about coronavirus and the steps that we're taking to make sure our patients are safe, our families and our and staff are safe. Despite the fact that Texas hasn't been as seriously impacted as some other parts of our country by COVID-19, we want to make sure we're taking care take all precautions so that we can do our part in slowing the rate of infection and making sure that our area does not become a hot spot. Our work continues and will continue. We have had to evolve our business practices, but I think, again, if we're thinking about silver linings, when you are faced with challenges like this, it also forces you to be creative and think of new ways to do things and new ways to connect to people, like virtual education or FaceTiming families to talk about donation. And so, I'm really proud that our staff has been able to continue our work sort of navigating around these barriers. We have seen nationally donation and transplantation decline, which is to be expected for all the reasons I've already talked about, but we are all working across the country to honor every donor's gift. And, I just want to end with a note of recognition for our donor families that, in the midst of personal crisis, losing a loved one, and in the midst of a global pandemic where I think we're all feeling a little unsure and uncertain about what's happening day to day, they are still choosing at that moment to think about others and to think about saving the lives of strangers. And we are just so honored and humbled here at LifeGift to have the opportunity to work with these families to help save others' lives. And that's really, I think, something that we've all realized in the course of this pandemic, how important our human connections are. And that's what donation and transplant is all about. So I think that is it for my presentation, but I do have the privilege of introducing our next speaker, my friend Kristen Cowan. Kristen is one of our Ambassador of Hope volunteers. She's a very active supporter of donation out in our community. And she is a donor mom, mother to a beautiful boy named Rylan that you're going to hear a lot more about as she shares her story. Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Next slide. Hi, guys. My name is Kristen Cowan, and thank you, Lauren and Christina, for having me present. And I'm also thanks for having us here today to be a part of this presentation. Just like Lauren said, I am an ambassador of hope, and I'm also an organ donor family. So that means that my son, Rylan, you can see in this picture right here, he's the little one on the right. In 2017, at 13 months old, he got sick with bacterial meningitis, and within a week, he earned his angel wings, so it's pretty quick. So we're coming up on 3 years. Rylan became our hero overnight as he was able to donate his organs to save 5 lives. We think of him every day. We miss him every day. But the gift of organ donation has allowed for us to know that his life continues on. And that's such an amazing thing about organ donation. Next slide. The gifts that Rylan is able to give have been showcased in this next slide. Like I said, he was able to save 5 lives through organ donation. The little cutie, the boy on the right side, his name is Gannon, and Gannon is now 4 years old, and he is the heart recipient. So you can see his scar along his chest. And back in the summer of 2018, my family and I traveled up to Alabama, and as you can see, I got to listen to his heartbeat. It brought such closure and peace to my family, and I will forever treasure this moment. The man in the orange on the left, his name is Brian Green. This is the Green family. They live out in Fort Worth. And I met his family December of 2019, and he is 44. He is the left kidney recipient. So what I love to brag about organ donation is the ages of the recipients, because I think that people don't know that, a 13-month-old, his organs can provide life to not just a 4-year-old, something maybe somewhere closer to his age, but also a 44-year-old male, the left kidney recipient, a 49-year-old, the right kidney recipient. So I feel privileged to be able to say that I've met 2 out of the 5. I know 3 out of the 5, and 2 I still don't know, but I feel blessed with those opportunities. Next slide. And as you can see, a lot of orange. So something about my sweet Rylan, his color that we chose to represent him and honor him and remember him is the color orange. Because it's happy and cheery. We also chose the green ribbon to honor and represent organ donation. So when Rylan passed, my family decided to start a foundation. It's called the Smilin' Rylan Foundation. Rylan was always smiling, so we call him this Smilin' Rylan. And we've been blessed with the opportunity to host an annual race in honor of him. So this past April, like yesterday, we host the run every April to honor Rylan. Number one, April is Rylan's birthday, and number two, April is Organ Donation Month, which at the time we didn't know that they coincide together. What our foundation does is help to fit our mission. So number one, our mission is obviously to raise awareness about organ donation. That is something we are very excited to do all the time, to advocate, to educate, and to get families to jump on board with that. Our other mission is obviously to raise money to give back to organizations that helped us when we were going through our crisis of losing our sweet angel. We give back to LifeGift, and for some reason you can't see in this slide, but you saw it maybe a couple slides back. The LifeGift car has a picture of Rylan on it. Our first fundraiser, we raised money with Kendra Scott Give Back, and that money went directly to LifeGift. And we have this beautiful, it's a car that belongs to LifeGift that travels around and has Rylan's beautiful face as an advertisement for organ donation. And I love that it's a baby because it also, again, advocates that it doesn't have to just be a child or an adult. It can also be a baby. So I love that. And then we also give money back to Ronald McDonald House. They house us while we're in the hospital. Emma's Hugs, if you haven't heard of Emma's Hugs, it's a smaller organization, but they provide parking cards worth $115 of families when they're in the hospital. And Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which is an organization that comes in and takes volunteer photography of your family and provides you with a photo keepsake. So our past year, we were also faced, like Lauren said, with challenges of COVID. It was already set to have our annual run on April 25th, but with COVID, we decided to go virtual. So we were super sad to not host our event in person, to gather and celebrate and remember and to advocate. But I will have to keep you guys posted on our actual amounts that we raised closer to the end of May. But I am happy to report that we had 698 people register for our virtual race. So that was such a surprise and honor. Again, another opportunity for us as organ donor family to advocate organ donation. And to add to everything, because I don't have another slide in here, but we were blessed with the opportunity. Thank you, LifeGift, for choosing my family. We were chosen to fly up with Lauren and her family as our representative from LifeGift to California for the Donate Life Rose Parade opportunity. Rylan's little face got put on this beautiful, what they call a fluorograph, and the fluorograph goes onto this beautiful, huge float with 44 other angels that represent and define the gift of life. And we were really blessed with this opportunity, something that I will forever hold dear in my heart, and thankful for our partnership with LifeGift. And that's about it. I hope that you understand that through all of this, the amazing partnership that happens when we to be the ambassador of hope. Like Christina said, we get to go volunteer in the community. And it's a great opportunity because what happens is in that partnership, we have people that volunteer just because they're organ donation advocates, or maybe they want to learn more about organ donation. We're representatives from LifeGift. What's amazing is that the donor families get to serve. On the other end, I'm serving with recipient families. And so all of a sudden, overnight, you're automatically a family with other people because you just have this common bond of love for organ donation. So with that being said, thank you for the opportunity and letting me share. If you want to find out more about the Smilin' Ryland Foundation, you can go to www.smilinrylandfoundation.org. And you can find out a little bit more about Ryland, what we do as our foundation, and who we raise our money for. But I want to go ahead and hand the baton over from organ donation donor family to an organ donor recipient, which is Melvin Morrison. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is a friend of mine, my very first speaking opportunity to partner with him, and he's such a great inspiration. And like I said, you become family overnight with everyone that you get to volunteer and be a part with. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kristen. You know, I hate following Kristen's story because she has such a wonderful story. And it just kind of makes my story just seem so bad, I guess, you know, because I'm recipient. And, you know, and she's someone who actually gave an organ, or somebody like me an organ. But my name is Melvin Morrison. I am, too, also a Fort Bend ISD employee. You know, I work at Kempner High School. I teach high school English, 12th grade. I also coach football and basketball. But my story began actually 12 years ago. If you go to the next slide for me, you know, I kind of break my story up into parts. You know, there's the before, there's the doing, and there's the after. You know, just so happened that picture there in the middle at the top, that is my high school graduation picture. You know, that was taken, you know, I'll tell you, it was taken back in '77. That's when I graduated. And there's a picture of me playing football, the football team there. There's a picture of me coaching. You know, it just kind of show you just, you know, I wanted you to see how healthy I was at this particular time. You know, I grew up I'm an inner city kid. I grew up in the down the street from U of H and Texas Southern University, you know, a community called Third Ward. And I was just blessed to come out of there, you know, without having ever gone to jail, you know, not doing drugs, not doing alcohol. You know, I got up out of there, you know, I went to school, I went to college, I got my degrees. I got married, I had 2 kids. You see at the bottom there, you see a picture of my 2 kids there when they were much smaller. You know, we went on a trip to California, but we stopped in Vegas and the Grand Canyon. If you look at the picture with me and with the guy and the kid in the red shirt, you can see that's a much healthier picture of me. You know, that is a picture of me back around the time I learned I had the disease. Coincidentally, the young man that's in the picture just finished medical school. So he is a doctor now. But at the time, he said he was going to be president. In the top picture on the left, that's a picture of me just before I got my transplant. Our campus had a thing called Dancing with the Staff. And you know, I don't know how I got through that. I was really struggling to breathe. But the story begins with me going to the doctor. I just had a normal doctor visit. And the doctor told me that I had, you know, I learned after a few visits that I had idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And I'm like, what the heck is that? You know, and come to find out, I had some scar tissue that's developing on my lungs, and, I didn't do anything. I lived a healthy life. You can see how healthy I was there in these pictures here. But, but I just kept going. There's a picture of me. We were in Colorado. We went rafting, my wife and I. I did everything right. And it just kind of upset me to find out that I had this, and I said it, because, you know, organ failure can happen to any of us. You don't have to do something to get it. It can just happen to anyone, which is one of the reasons why I try to advocate and let everybody know what to expect here. Um, but my wife and I, we love to travel. And if you go to the next slide there, this is, like I said, this is the before period. There's one missing. I have a slide where I'm in the hospital. Is that a third slide? Is that it? Okay, yeah, this is the one. Okay, here is me, a picture of me, pictures of me when I was in the hospital. And this was over a year. This is 2011. There's a picture of me down in the bottom where I was with chef, one of the top chefs. I can't remember the lady's name. She was in Dallas. That's about a year before I got transplanted. As a matter of fact, it was in December. We were in Dallas, and because I was having to go to Dallas to get worked up because my insurance at the time wouldn't take care of me here. Uh, so that was December, and you can see how healthy I was there. And one of the strange things about this disease, as far as I'm concerned, was I never looked sick. People would see me, parking handicap spots, uh, you know, and the only way they knew that had a problem was that I was carrying my oxygen tank and I had the hose, and it was in November when I started wearing it. I was still coaching football, and it was right after football season had ended that I needed my oxygen. Up until then, I didn't really need it. And I started bringing my backpack. I put my oxygen tank in there, and I had the hose out of it. And I would go from my English class to the gym to coach basketball with my oxygen on. And that's the only time anyone on campus ever knew that I had an issue, because I never looked like it. I used to get strange when I park in handicap because I never looked like it. You know, until I actually went in the hospital. And you can see pictures of me there. Those are pictures from, I got transplanted on June the 12th, 2012. And picture in the middle there is a picture of me 2 days after my transplant. There are pictures of me, with my pastor and my minister there at church. You can see in the middle at the bottom down there, that's actually some sutures. I had staples, where they had staple my, they had to staple my chest back there because they had to break my ribs to go in and do this transplant. And so, those are pictures from 2 days after. I think the last picture there is 10 days later, where, after I got transplanted, you can see how much better I was doing. But I would have I would suffer another issue there. My transplant was June 2012. In January of 13, I would go back into the hospital, and that's when my kidneys were shut down. And if you go back to the previous slide there, that's when my kidneys were shut down, and I would have to go back in the hospital. The picture on the left with the guy with the red hoodie on, that's my son, and I put that picture there because the same day I went in the hospital is the same day he enlisted to go into the Navy. So I wasn't able to go and watch him leave. But the next picture next to that, that's a picture of my daughter. That is my kidney donor. My daughter gave me her kidney, and it was really something I didn't ask for. It's just something that she did. I can't remember if it's Christina or anybody talked about the transplant games, but one of the things I do now is I participate in transplant games, and ever since 2014, when I was able to, I participated in transplant games. In the middle picture right there's a picture of my wife and I and a close friend of ours, and that was in 2014, and I had just actually, I was headed to dialysis. So I hadn't even had a kidney transplant then. And this kind of gives you an idea how small I was. If you saw the previous picture, how big I was. In this picture here, I think I might have been 140 pounds if I was that big. That's how much weight I had lost. And at 5K that I walked, that was the first time and the farthest I'd ever stayed on my feet that long. Usually I would probably stay on my feet about 5 minutes. And my wife and my friend there, Andrea, they made me finish that walk. And I was so proud of myself after I did that. But I also left and went to dialysis right after that too. But things I like to do is I love volunteering. I've become a big advocate for trying to educate people. I educate my students in my classroom. I educate people in the community. I teach. I'm a third-party driver's license tester. So, I educate those people when they come in there to test for their driver's license. If you picture on the bottom right, it's very, very small, and I apologize for that. But that's just a picture of, we were in Cleveland for the transplant games, and majority of those people in that picture are recipients, either recipients or donor families that are getting ready to compete in another 5K walk there. And that's probably the most amazing thing that you can participate in. The transplant games will be here in Houston next summer, at the end of May. And if you get an opportunity, try to volunteer for that or just attend and just to see the people that are there, all the recipients, all of the donor families. It's just an amazing event to attend. And this one is the World Game, so you'll have people not only in the United States here, but you have people from all over the country participating in this event. It's the biggest of all the transplant games. But that's what I do. It's been 8 years. It'll be 8 years this summer that I've had my double lung transplant. It'll be 6 years this summer for my kidney transplant. And I'm doing very well right now, even though I'm in the house. And it doesn't bother me having to be in the house. So a lot of people are that dispute why we're having online classes. Well, I'm one of those reasons why we have online classes, because the first thing I do is I educate my kids on what I have and and how much space they need to give me. So I've been practicing social distancing since 2012. But so it's not new to me. I've been wearing a mask on and off since 2012. The last 2 years, it seemed like something's been going on campus. I have a mask, and one of the principals was saying something about masks. They said, but Morrison has been wearing his mask since he's been here. So this is nothing new for us. But I just, we need it. People like me, our immune systems are real low. We take a lot of pills. Even they tell you you're gonna take a lot of pills, but you don't believe it until you see it. And you're like, oh my! I mean, I brought a grocery bag of pills home when I left the hospital, and I was like, oh, that was like, I was like, okay, they still taking a lot of pills. I didn't realize I was taking this much. But it does kind of taper off. But yes, we do. We take a lot of pills to keep ourselves alive. I try to do what I can to stay healthy. I eat pretty much can eat anything I want to eat. But the main thing I like to do is I love volunteering. I love volunteering for LifeGift. I love volunteering and sharing with people. I always have a shirt on when I go to clinic. I wear them when I go do my testing. Especially in African American communities, we believe in all these different taboos. So one of the things I try to do is I try to tell people about those different taboos, that they're not, and I've been able to tell my story and change the minds. And anytime I'm in a group, if I can change one mind, I think that's a success story in itself. Because that's one less person that we would have gotten had I not told this story, or Kristen hadn't told her story. So I look at the little baby steps that we take when I do a presentation. If I come out of there without changing the mind, I feel like I've failed to some degree, but I've educated them. I gave them something to think about. Yeah, and that's the whole thing here, giving people something to think about and let them know that, a lot of this stuff is false. Being an English teacher, and I'll close with this, being an English teacher, I use analogies on a lot of things. And one of the stories that we read, novels that we read, is Frankenstein. And if you kids have read Frankenstein, and I always said, hey, for some reason that was the first transplant, and I describe myself sometimes as Frankenstein. When he was going out getting all these spare parts. So I'm like, hey, I'm Frankenstein. So I just think that we need to keep getting the word out. You guys keep educating, keep sharing it. Anytime you need me to speak, I'll be more than happy to speak for you. But I just want to thank everybody for giving me an opportunity to speak in this forum.
Can you guys hear me just fine? No feedback? Okay. So this concludes LifeGift's presentation. Does any of our, it was truly an honor to hear each one of you speakers' side of the story in terms of organ transplant. It was truly moving. I truly appreciate you guys all coming here with us to hear your stories. Does any of our speakers or other students that are on the call right now have any questions?
Melvin, do you know who your double lung recipient is?
Who my donor was? No. Mm-hmm. I have several times I have written letters to the family. I just recently wrote one probably a couple of months ago, and I still hadn't heard anything. So I'm gonna keep writing until I get an answer. And they just say, "Hey, please stop writing me." But I understand that when I write that it brings back probably a memory that they don't want to relive. But I'm just so grateful that I was able to receive a lung as quickly as I was. I didn't have to wait very long. I got on the list. Actually, I started my workup in January of 12, and April I was put on the transplant list. And believe it or not, I got 3 different calls. The first call I got a week to the day when I was listed. And I went to the hospital and ended up not getting that one because I needed 2 lungs. And only one of the lungs turned out to be good. The other one was bad. So whoever the backup person was to me, ended up getting that one. But the hard part about that was I was actually already on the table. I was ready to go get the surgery. I had needles and everything going everywhere, and I had to take all those needles out. And I was like, "Oh, come on, you serious?" But then I got a second call doing finals in May. Then the third call I got the second week of June. But no, I still don't know who it was. I just know it was somebody who had an accident, got knocked off of a horse. And I think they were in the Houston area. All I know is I think they were at Herman Hospital. uh, and I was at Methodist. That's all I know about the individual.
Great. If there aren't any more questions, I just want to remind everybody, if they're interested in learning more about our Second Chance Run, to go to lifegift.org. And also, if you're interested in becoming a volunteer or getting involved with LifeGift, also go to lifegift.org and click on Get Involved and fill out the application. So thank you for having us, Elsa.
Thank you. Just one more call. Does any of the speakers or the presenters that are with us in the call have any questions?
I actually have a question. My name is Nehal, part of the Medical Science Academy Officer Board, and my question was, I saw during the first speaker's presentation about how COVID-19, if a patient had COVID-19, they weren't able to become a donor. And so that got me thinking, in the grand scheme of organ donation, is there a way, for lack of a better word, to like sterilize a donor of whatever pathogen they might have died from in order for them to be able to donate their organs?
Can I answer that one?
Go ahead.
There are, I've had to take a lot of different medicines because of something that my donor had that I did not have. So to answer that question is, I would say yes. It's just that they don't have a cure for the COVID virus right now. So that's probably why they're staying away from that. But I know that there are other diseases that are out there that a donor might have that the recipient does not have. So, in my case, I'm fighting off something that I don't even know, what the disease is. I'm taking all these different meds, and I'm on and off of a lot of stuff, a lot of steroids or whatever the case might be, until they think they got it. And occasionally, I do have to go back in and their treatment for that disease or whatever that virus was that they found in my donor.
Yeah, and I can, thanks. That's a great response. I can tag on to that. Really, right now, the only absolute rule outs for organ donation until COVID came along was an active cancer within the past 5 years. Any other infection, disease, syndrome, is not a rule out for donation or transplantation if it may just need to be managed. Like Melvin said, if we have a donor, a potential donor with an infection, can we give them antibiotics to manage that prior to transplantation? Even patients who are HIV positive can now donate some organs to recipients who are HIV positive. So while we don't have a way to sort of blast out or irradiate infections or disease prior to recovering organs, we can certainly manage infections and manage diseases. And, COVID is an absolute rule out because it's such a new novel. That's why they call it novel coronavirus. It's so new and it's so contagious that, we're still really worldwide sort of researching and understanding the pathology of the disease. But I expect in time, when there is a vaccine for coronavirus and they have a treatment, that this won't be an absolute rule out. We're just in the stages where it's so new that, and because recipients are immunosuppressed, we want to keep the safety of our potential recipients of paramount importance. A great question. Thank you. And thank you, Melvin, for your answer.
Do you guys have time to answer a few more questions? Students typed in a couple on our chat.
Sure.
Okay, so one question is, I think we answered the one regarding volunteering in terms of LifeGift. You recommended us to go on to your website for options. There's a lot of options for students. Another one was that when in the scope of LifeGift, what other organizations do you work with when you are doing your daily jobs?
I work with not only LifeGift. I work with I'm on the Heart Exchange Committee with St. Luke's. I also volunteer with the Living Bank, and And like I said, I just, I guess you say when I'm out and I'm wearing my shirt, I'm representing all of the above. Just just I just want to educate.
I shared the four that my organization represents. So I'm kind of from the other side, not the medical side, but maybe from a family that might be grieving. So I think that my voice is also important because if you are going into the medical field, you are also needing to care for the patient too, and the patient and their family. So it's also important to know the services that can be available for grieving families. So, like I said, in my foundation also funds and supports the Ronald McDonald House, which houses families when their loved ones are in the hospital. MS Hugs, which provides a parking chip for families, and that's in all major hospitals in the Houston area, in the medical center. And then Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep mainly serves it's family photography and it's mainly like a stillbirth, that kind of thing. So not always necessarily connected with LifeGift, but those are services that my family provided about, and our mission is also to make sure families know about those services so that they can educate, like Melvin said, and help families have services at their fingertips if they are the ones going through it or might know someone that might be going through it. And then the last one I was going to share, obviously besides LifeGift, is for grieving families, which is called Bo's Place, which is free, kind of like, I guess, a safe place to grieve for families. So those were all resources that were literally provided to us while we were going through our grief journey, and having to go through the process of going through organ donation. So those are my recommendations from a donor family side.
Can I add also that something that happens to me a lot of time now is because I am a recipient and I've shared my story a lot of times. I have students who have parents or relatives who come and ask me questions about being a recipient and in the whole process, and it's just being able to do that also helps them better prepare themselves for what's coming. I've met a lot of individuals who are needing kidneys. I've met individuals who are thinking about being a living donor as a kidney, and so not only do I do these things through LifeGift, but just personally, I've met people say, hey, what do I need to do to be a living donor? I have a brother, a sister, a cousin, or whatever, and I'm thinking about being a donor. And I tell them immediately, one, I bring up my daughter, but then I also know a lot of other individuals who have given and who are doing very well, and I get them in touch with all these different people that I know to help them through this process. Same thing with people who are getting put on the list. I talk to them and just kind of put them at ease. I guess you can say I kind of, I'm not a counselor, but it's what I feel like I'm doing a lot of times. Because they're scared. I remember being scared. My question was, every time I go to clinic, when was your transplant? How long has it been? How long were you in pain? How long was this? How long was that? And until one day I woke up, I wasn't in the same type of pain anymore. It was a different type of pain. I still have a pain, but not that severe pain I was experiencing when I got the transplant. So I share my story all the time. And I help save lives. I think a lot of people are stressing. So I just tell them, hey, just relax. It's gonna happen. Just take care of yourself. Do what you got to do.
Any other questions? All right, I think that concludes our live stream. I truly appreciate you all joining us once again. It's been an honor. I love talking to you guys just because the transplant community is something that should be talked about more openly in the community and more people should know about it. Yes, so I guess we'll end the live stream now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.